Have you ever felt like your life is heavier than it should be, even though, on the outside, everything looks fine? You wake up already tired. Your mind is racing. You make simple decisions as if you're carrying the weight of the world. And still, you ask yourself, why does everything feel so hard? The truth is, you might be complicating life without even noticing. A quiet, invisible mistake, one that most people make. And over time, it's silently stealing your inner peace. Einstein saw this with remarkable clarity. And in this video, I'm going to show you what he understood about the human mind and how this understanding could be the key to living with more lightness, clarity, and emotional freedom. If you're feeling exhausted, even when there's no obvious reason, stay with me. You are one step away from seeing what almost no one sees. Have you ever felt like you're living a life that's much heavier than it needs to be? Like every day feels like a mission that's far too complex, even when, on the surface, everything looks normal? You wake up, you go to work, you try to be useful, to be someone, you do everything right, and still, you feel that something's off. And your mind never stops. It talks, it thinks, it compares. It corrects, repeats, judges. There's this constant buzz inside us. And that noise turns even the simple into something complicated. Albert Einstein once said, "Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated." Maybe you think that quote came from a monk, but it didn't. It came from a physicist, a scientist, a man who explored infinity but who deeply understood the value of silence, and that made me wonder, is life truly as confusing as it seems? Or is it the way we think that creates the confusion? We complicate everything because we're afraid to fail, afraid of looking weak, afraid of losing, afraid of not being good enough. And so, we build routines that grow more and more complex. We develop emotional strategies, layer after layer. But still, we feel lost, like we're trapped in a maze we designed ourselves. But what if Einstein was right? What if simplicity is true intelligence? What if the fastest path, not to success, but to peace, is simply to stop complicating things? Today, in this video, I want to invite you to look inward, to recognize the invisible weight you've been carrying, and to ask yourself, honestly, what am I complicating without realizing it? Because once you begin to ask that question, incredible things begin to shift. Have you ever had the feeling that your life is way more complicated than it needs to be? Everything feels heavy. Your tasks, your thoughts, your relationships. You wake up and already feel behind. You rush, reply to messages, try to stay in control. But deep down, there's a quiet restlessness that won't go away. A sense that something is out of place, even when, on the outside, everything looks like it's working. The truth is, we overcomplicate everything. And the strangest part? We don't even realize we're doing it. Albert Einstein, whom most know as the genius of physics, once said something that could completely change the way you see your own mind. Life is really simple, but we insist on making it complicated. That didn't come from a monk. It didn't come from a spiritual guru. It came from a scientist, a man who worked with the most complex formulas in existence, but who understood something deeply essential about the nature of life, that the human mind, if not observed with care, turns everything into a labyrinth. And maybe that's what's happening to you. You're caught in a cycle of trying to fix your life with the same logic that created the problem. You try to fix the chaos by thinking more. You try to calm anxiety by taking more control. You try to feel complete by achieving more, but none of that brings lasting peace. Why? Because peace isn't found in the solutions. It's found in the space between them. It lives in the pause, in the simple. But we've forgotten how to hear the simple. We live in fear of making mistakes, of failing, of being forgotten. And so we build increasingly complex routines in an attempt to keep everything under control. But in doing so, we drift away from our essence. We lose ourselves. What if Einstein was right? What if simplifying is actually the most profound act of intelligence? What if everything you've been looking for, relief, clarity, direction, has been waiting for you in a place you've never thought to look? In Lightness. Today, I want to invite you to look inward, not to fix and not to judge, but simply to observe with honesty, what am I complicating without realizing it? Because sometimes, all we really need is to stop carrying what was. Never ours to begin with. Stop for a moment and observe how you think. Right now, your mind is probably already trying to anticipate what's coming next, judging if this makes sense, thinking about everything still left to do today. It's almost never fully here, and that's exactly where complication begins. Yes, the mind was made to think, but the problem isn't thinking. It's thinking too much, thinking nonstop, thinking about everything at once and getting nowhere. And that's not your fault. The way your mind works today didn't come out of nowhere. It was shaped, conditioned, programmed by experiences, by fear, by expectations, by everything you were told you should be. Since childhood, we've been taught that the world is dangerous, competitive, urgent. We learned to run before we knew where we were going. We learned to please, to control, to plan every step out of fear of making mistakes. And when something slips out of our control, the mind does what it learned to do. It complicates. It creates plans B, C, D. It replays imaginary conversations. It invents future disasters. It builds a reality where everything must be calculated, predicted, and controlled. But here's the foul paradox. The more you try to control, the more anxious you become. The more you think, the more lost you feel. The more you try to solve life, the more it seems to slip through your fingers. Einstein understood this. He once said, "No problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it." In other words, if your mind created the confusion, you can't think your way out of it using the same mind. It's like being stuck in a maze, taking the same path over and over and expecting a new exit to appear. What needs to change is not the world. It's the way you look at it. And to do that, you have to understand. Complication is a defense mechanism. It's not there because you're weak or broken or disorganized. It's there because at some point in your life, complicating things made you feel safe. You overthink because you're afraid. Afraid of emptiness. Afraid of not being in control. Afraid of simply being present, being vulnerable, being silent. And silence is scary. Because silence brings us face to face with what's buried deep inside. And when you don't know how to feel what you feel, you think instead. You complicate to avoid feeling, but real life doesn't happen in thought. It happens in the now and the simple. It happens when you let go, even if just for a moment, what the mind complicates. The heart often understands with simplicity. Have you noticed that? When you're in love, everything feels lighter. When you're in nature, everything seems clearer. When you're at peace, even hard decisions feel obvious. It's not because your problems disappeared. It's because your mind stepped out of the maze. Einstein wasn't searching for formulas to complicate the world. He was looking for patterns, essence, harmony. He knew that the beauty of the universe lies in the simple laws that govern the whole, and that sometimes a second of silence holds more truth than 1,000 thoughts. So maybe the question is no longer, why is everything so complicated? But rather, why do I keep thinking the same way that creates the complication? The way out begins here, in the moment when you observe your mind without following its momentum. When you stop chasing the answer and begin to listen to what exists beyond the noise. The mind will always try to complicate. That's its nature. But you don't have to obey every thought it produces. You can learn to choose what's worth carrying. And that is the beginning of true intelligence. Not the kind that accumulates data, but the kind that knows what can be let go. When you hear the word simplicity, what comes to mind? Many people think of something shallow, naive, or maybe even foolish. As if being simple were the opposite of being intelligent. As if depth could only be found in complex ideas, long words, difficult answers. But Einstein believed the exact opposite. He believed that true intelligence isn't about making things more complicated. It's about seeing through the confusion. Getting straight to what matters. Like a beam of light cutting through a dense cloud. Any fool can make something more complicated, but it takes a genius to make it simple. Albert Einstein, and this phrase says far more than it seems. It's not just about science. It's about life. Einstein would spend days contemplating the universe, time, matter, energy. He was a genius in the most technical sense. But even in the face of all that complexity, he deeply valued the beauty of simplicity. He said that if a theory couldn't be explained clearly and simply, then it probably wasn't fully understood yet. Now think about that in your own life. How many times have you hid behind complexity because you didn't know or didn't have the courage to go straight to the point? How many times has a conversation become a problem simply because no one said what they truly felt? How often do you build rules, lists, systems just to avoid facing the emptiness? The mind does this all the time. It wears complexity like a mask, because simplicity requires something we've forgotten. Presence, and being present is difficult. In a world that teaches you to run, it's difficult when your mind has been trained to doubt, predict, and control. But Einstein said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. He wasn't talking about a shallow, dumbed-down version of life. He was talking about essential simplicity, like the sound of a well-tuned guitar, like the silence after a truth spoken from the heart, like the decision you already knew you needed to make, but could only recognize when the internal noise finally quieted down. That kind of simplicity is powerful because it doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't shout. It doesn't fight for space. It simply is. And maybe that's why so many people are afraid of it. Because within the simple, there's nowhere left to hide. That's why we complicate, because deep down, we're not yet ready to face what is obvious, what's right in front of our eyes, what the heart already knows. But the mind keeps trying to avoid. Einstein saw this in the universe. And if you take a moment to really look, you'll see the universe is simple. The planet spins without effort. Day turns into night without anxiety. A tree grows in silence. A flower doesn't need a manual to bloom. Simplicity is nature's way. It's the ego that complicates. It's fear that creates excess. It's pride that demands more than what's necessary. So when we talk about simplifying life, we're not talking about doing less. We're talking about doing what makes sense. We're talking about removing what isn't essential, so that what truly matters can finally breathe. Einstein wasn't just a physicist. He was a philosopher of existence. And his genius wasn't only in formulas, but in the clarity with which he saw what really matters. Simplicity is wisdom and peace, and maybe that's exactly what you're missing right now. Less explaining, more space to feel. Now imagine this. A person is walking a long trail, heading toward a mountain. The day is beautiful, the sky clear. At first, the walk is light. She enjoys it, walking, breathing, feeling the wind on her face, but as time passes, she begins to feel a strange weight on her back. She looks around, confused, but she's not carrying anything visible. Her backpack is small, packed only with essentials. Yet every step starts to feel heavier than the last. She's tired, but she doesn't know why. And this is the state many people live in. Walking through life with an invisible backpack, filled with worries, unresolved memories, ideas that aren't even theirs, and 1,000 what-ifs. What if I can't handle it? What if I disappoint someone? What if I'm not enough? This backpack, even if no one else can see it, weighs on your shoulders, on your soul, on your days. And the worst part? You start to think that this weight is normal. You wake up tired and say, it's just another hard day. You struggle to make simple decisions and think, maybe I'm just an indecisive person. You feel overwhelmed and blame yourself for not being able to manage it all. But what if the problem isn't you? What if it's the invisible excess you've been carrying without even knowing? Einstein never spoke about backpacks, but he understood this. He knew that the human mind tends to accumulate, and accumulation creates noise, and noise creates exhaustion. The mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's open. Einstein, so what does it mean to have an open mind? It means having a light mind. A mind that knows what truly belongs to it and what it's finally time to release. But in our world, learning to let go has become a challenge. Because everything is stimulus, everything is speed. We've grown used to living in survival mode. Have you noticed? You walk into a store and there are 10,000 options. You check your phone and 30 notifications are waiting. You try to relax, and within 5 minutes, you're already thinking about what you should be doing. This constant bombardment of choices, distractions, and demands turns even simple things into draining decisions. Even what's supposed to be enjoyable becomes another task. You sit down to watch a movie and ask yourself, did I choose the right one? You take time off to rest and wonder, am I being productive enough? You talk to someone and overanalyze every word. Did I say something wrong? This is the complicated mind running in the background. Always active, always worried, always trying to solve things that don't need solving. And the cost of this? It's enormous. Mental exhaustion, silent anxiety, loss of clarity, disconnection from yourself. And just like that person on the trail, you start to slow down. You drift farther from the mountain. You forget why you even began the journey. But here's the good news. You can take off that backpack. You can slowly open that mental zipper and look inside and realize that some of what's in there doesn't even belong to you. It was placed there by fear, by pressure, by old patterns. And then you get to choose. Does this still make sense to carry? Because living isn't about carrying weight all the time. Living is about learning to walk lighter with less noise, less fear, less urgency. Einstein believed the universe moves in order and simplicity. And you are part of that same universe. You were made to flow, to grow, to shine. Maybe what you need right now isn't a magical solution, but the courage to ask the right question. What part of this invisible backpack can I leave behind? Today, many people confuse simplicity with a lack of ambition. They think that being simple means living with less, without dreams, without depth. But that's not simplicity. That's limitation. True simplicity is clarity. It's knowing what matters and having the courage to let go of the rest. In a world that worships excess, to simplify is a rebellious act. While everyone chases more money, more validation, more distraction, the simple seek only the essential. Einstein understood this. He wasn't interested in complicated answers. He searched for the beauty hidden behind the chaos. He said, everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. In other words, it's not about impoverishing life. It's about purifying it. Simplicity isn't about having little. It's about not getting lost in what doesn't matter. It's being able to say, This serves me, and this no. Longer. It's living with less noise, less rush, less weight, because the simpler you become on the inside, the more space you create to breathe, to feel, to live in truth. Now that you understand the power of simplicity, it's time to bring it into your daily life. Here's a small practice, but one that can transform your relationship with life. For the next 7 days each morning, write down, what can I make simpler today? It doesn't have to be anything grand. Maybe it's your schedule, your food, a conversation, or just a thought that's been weighing you down. Simplicity starts small in the choice not to react the same way, in the decision not to take everything personally. In the moment of pausing, before responding. At night, ask yourself, what felt lighter today because I chose to simplify? This ritual builds awareness, and awareness is the beginning of freedom. You don't need to change everything at once. You just need to begin letting go of what no longer serves you, because the more space you create, the more life can reach you. There's a quiet belief that was planted in our minds long ago. If it's easy, it doesn't count. If it's light, it has no value. And that belief that only what's hard has value became a prison we didn't even notice. We learned to distrust peace, to doubt what's simple, to think that something only matters if it hurts, if it costs, if it demands sweat and sacrifice. But who said the path needs to be hard to be meaningful? Look at nature. The tree doesn't force its growth. It simply grows. The river doesn't fight its path. It flows. The sun doesn't need to shout to shine. It's the human mind that complicates what's already perfect. This belief that only difficulty is worthy makes us sabotage the light choices. It makes us reject opportunities that seem too good to be true. It makes us complicate relationships, decisions, even feelings just to feel like we're doing something that has value. But real value isn't in difficulty. It's in truth. If it's hard and true, that's okay. But if it's simple and true, that's just as valid. You don't have to keep proving yourself. You don't have to complicate your life to justify your existence. Einstein saw genius, not in those who build labyrinths, but in those who find simple ways out. Maybe what you need right now isn't to fight harder, but to trust more. To trust the lightness. To trust that the simple can also be profound. To trust that clarity isn't weakness, it's alignment. And if this resonates with you, and you want to go even deeper into Einstein's mind and the lesson that changed his own understanding of the universe, I strongly suggest you watch this next. Why Einstein's mistake changed everything. It's a powerful reminder that even the most brilliant minds sometimes had to unlearn in order to evolve, just like you might need to. And remember, you have the right to live with less weight without guilt. Simplicity isn't just a practical choice. At its core, it's a spiritual path. Because when you remove the excess, what remains is you, without masks, without distractions, without the 1,000 voices telling you who to be. And that's where the real encounter begins. Einstein looked at the universe and saw order in the apparent chaos. He saw beauty in the invisible laws. He saw intelligence in how everything, absolutely everything, works without force. I want to know God's thoughts. The rest are details. Albert Einstein, that quote reveals something powerful, that at the center of it all, there is a divine simplicity, a powerful silence, a principle that sustains life without needing to be seen. And maybe that principle also lives inside you, but it only reveals itself when you quiet the noise, not the noise outside, but the one inside. The silence that appears when you stop fighting with life, when you stop needing to be right all the time, when you breathe and simply are. Simplicity is creating space for the soul to breathe. It's returning to what's essential. It's remembering that you're not here to accumulate, but to feel, to learn, to exist. Maybe that's true wisdom, not to understand everything, but to empty yourself enough to receive what truly matters. Maybe, just maybe, you realize today that you don't need another technique, another tool, another magic formula. Maybe what you really needed to hear was this: that you can live with less weight, less pressure, less thought, less noise, and that doesn't make you weak. It makes you whole. Einstein saw simplicity as a form of wisdom, and wisdom as the bridge between knowledge and peace. So before you leave this video, I invite you to make one small yet powerful choice. Comment below. What will you simplify today? It can be a thought, an attitude, an expectation. Write it from the heart, because sometimes just naming it is the beginning of liberation. And if this message touched something inside you, share it with someone who might also be tired of overcomplicating everything. You never know. Maybe this is exactly the message they needed to hear. Remember, when you stop chasing what you don't need, what's true begins to find you. See you in the next video. Until then, simplify.